Hi there, this is Dylan from Teach English Spain, and this is a podcast all about teaching English in this fantastic country called Spain. So in this episode, I'm going to talk about the roles of a teacher. So as an English language teacher, English as a foreign language at least, or English as a second language, one of the roles that we have is we are a teacher, therefore we need to teach. And I guess teaching you can define very simply as imparting knowledge to the learner. Okay, that's the traditional view of teaching. You know something, the learner doesn't know that thing, there's an information or a knowledge gap, and you are transmitting the knowledge from your brain into the learner's or the student's brain. Okay, that's the traditional idea. And when I think back to when I studied French at school, that's what the teacher did. The teacher, well, I remember my teacher, one of my teachers, was a very, very tall old man with a bald head. He seemed like he was 7 foot tall or nearly 2.5 meters tall, but he probably wasn't. But he used to stand on a chair to make him even taller, and he used to just lecture. And he was terrifying. Okay, but he thought he was imparting knowledge from his brain into our brains. Most of us never learned French, so I'm not sure he was that successful. So there is that notion of teaching as imparting knowledge, sharing knowledge, if you like, okay, which is very valuable. But in a language classroom, or indeed any classroom I imagine, we have lots of other roles. So in this episode, I'm just going to talk about some of the other roles that we may decide to adopt at certain times in the lesson. So as a teacher, we're also sometimes a manager, okay, which is where we talk about classroom management, organising the class, organising which students work with other students, changing the seating arrangements if there are seats and tables in your classroom, which I'm sure there are, deciding what to use, is it the whiteboard, deciding who can use the whiteboard when it's not you, the teacher. So we obviously have to do a bit of management. We have to organise what happens in the classroom and organise the activities and the interaction patterns, which by interaction patterns I mean, are the students expected to work individually or in pairs? Do they work in a small group? Is it a whole class kind of discussion activity? Is it what we call a mingling activity, where the students go around the class talking to as many people as possible? There are lots and lots of different interaction patterns. And as a teacher, you have to manage those interaction patterns. And also behaviour. Sometimes students will be talking when you want to talk, so you might have to insist that they stop talking and listen to you. There may be other things going on in the class. The students may be having an argument or doing things which they're not supposed to, or not listening to you, whatever. You've got to manage all those things, as well as managing resources, managing the curriculum, managing the syllabus, managing the resources you have at your disposal, managing the course book and the materials and everything like that. So another thing is you have to be a supervisor, and by supervisor I mean that you have to just make sure that you observe and you watch out for what the learners are doing while they're doing the activities. Now you can be quite direct in terms of how you supervise, or you can be a bit more standoffish and move to the back and make sure you're not that visible to the rest of the students. But you have to watch what's going on in class. You have to observe. We call that monitoring. So it's very important to monitor as a teacher. So you might give the students an exercise or an activity, and you need to monitor if they have understood what they need to do, if they're doing it correctly, if they finished, if they need help, if it's time to change the groups, if one student, for example, in a small group is dominating, all these things. Another role, of course, is that you're a resource. Okay, when you're teaching, students will say to you, "Teacher, what does this word mean?" And you as a teacher can decide, A, you could try to define it yourself. B, you could maybe write a sentence on the board with this word, which they don't understand, and see if they can work it out for themselves. You could give them a dictionary, or let them use their online dictionary app or whatever. Or you could ask them if you can ask the other students, see if they know what the word means. So, but we are often a resource. Students will come to us and they'll want to know something, and if you know it, you have to decide how you give that information to them. We also have to be an assessor. Okay, so it's very important that we assess and we evaluate our students' progress. And we can do that in many ways, formally through testing, or informally just by listening, interacting, observing, making notes about what happens in the class and what each student is doing. Not only each student, but also the class as a whole will have a dynamic, so you need to assess how the class is going, whether most of the students need some help in one aspect, or whether you can move on to the next topic, all these things. And also for students, most learners want feedback. If they speak in English, they want to know if their speaking is satisfactory, how was it. So you as a teacher are often in the role of assessor or evaluator. And you can provide some very valuable feedback to your learners, mainly, as I said, about their speaking or their writing. Now, another role is you as a teacher can be a prompter. So sometimes students are trying to do something, they're trying to work out something, and they can't quite get it, so they might need a little help from you. So you as the teacher can just give them a little bit of help. You're not telling them the answer necessarily, but you're prompting them. For example, maybe the student is looking for the word, I don't know, let's look, factory. They want to say the word factory, and they know it starts with F. And if they're Spanish, they may sound something like fabrica, factory. It's on the tip of their tongue. So you as a teacher can help them. Maybe you can prompt them by saying factor. Okay, this would be an example of prompting. You're just giving them little clues so they can work something out, or they can access the information for themselves. Because often our students have the information there, they just need to be able to find it and locate it. Now, as teachers, we often participate in activities, especially when we model an activity. So say, for example, you are modeling or you're presenting a new structure, let's say questions and answers in English. Questions and answers about the past. What did you do last night? I went to the cinema. So you as a teacher might do a little exercise where they ask each other about what they did last night or last week or last weekend. And you as a teacher can decide to participate if you want to, especially if it's a mingling activity and all the students are moving around. You may decide you don't want to participate, but often we decide to participate at the beginning because we can show the students what to do and they can observe us and they feel more comfortable doing it with us, the teacher. And then you let them do it with their peers. Okay. Now also, of course, we are an advisor. Students will come to us and they'll ask us questions and ask us for advice. Maybe the best way to study, the best way to improve their reading, the best way to improve their grammar, all these things, whether they should take a test or not. So we need to know our students and we need to give them advice based on our intuition, our observation and our personal experience. And of course, we need to do that with our learners. We need to make it kind of a collaboration. We need to cooperate. Okay. Sometimes we move straight into telling our students what they should do, when really we should adopt more of a coaching role perhaps and discuss how they feel, what their thoughts are, what their opinions are about certain things before we go straight into giving them advice. Now, of course, we're a facilitator. Now, this is a word that's been used a lot in the last 10-15 years in teaching. And a facilitator basically means we help, we support, we encourage, we enable our learners to improve their English. So this is why, for example, lecturing doesn't work so well for many students, because it's quite passive. And if we want to facilitate learning, then we've got to encourage a more active part, and the students have to be more active in their own learning, and we can facilitate that by encouraging them, by guiding them, all these things. Now also we're a model. We're a model presumably of good use of language. So if we are introducing a new structure or some new vocabulary, we have to model it, we have to present it, we have to show the students what it sounds like, how we use it, everything like that. So that's very important. Now, of course, with the internet and access to digital resources, students have so many options now. They don't only hear their teacher, and they don't only hear the class CD or cassette. So we, in many ways, are only one of several models. But it's probably still a very effective way of learning to actually watch someone do it physically in front of you. And of course, we're also a mentor. We're a mentor. And that's why it's often a good idea for teachers to have been through the process of learning a language themselves, because it gives us an insight into the struggles that our learners might have. And so we can often talk about experiences from our own life, and that may encourage them, that will show them that actually they're not alone, that we understand their struggles, we understand the challenge. And that's probably one of the reasons why non-native speakers of English can make really fantastic teachers, because they've been through this process and they've identified the challenges, they've identified the difficult parts about learning English, and they, as I said, often have much more insight than native speakers about many aspects of the language. Okay, so there are lots of roles. I'm sure there are a few I've missed out. If you do have any ideas for other roles, or if you'd like to share some of the other important roles that you think English as a foreign language teachers have, please get in touch, and I can add them to the show notes. So this was another episode of Teach English Spain. Just to let you know, if you want to do a Trinity Cert TESOL in Granada, please go to teachenglishspain.com. And I'll see you in the next episode. Bye bye.